Hey you guys, what is up? My name is JC. Now today I wanted to kind of talk about Destiny 2, where it's going to be going with Beyond Light. Um, Mainly their pricing structure and all that, because I do see a lot of people criticizing Bungie for this type of thing. Um, it's worth talking about, right? I came upon this video by a NovemberHotel, um, where he's saying that the Beyond Light is not worth the $50 price tag. I've already gone through and kind of watched the video and gone through as much as I can to kind of get a more structured idea of the arguments that I want to make against them and kind of record. But we'll go ahead, we'll play the video, um, and I'll try to stop at each point to try to criticize whatever points that he may have. This isn't me justifying Bungie's method of kind of throwing out DLCs every year that are kind of high priced. I do feel like that's kind of scummy, especially with them having Eververse and you still have paying for items. But this is more of a critique of his own arguments towards Destiny 2 and whether or not the price is justified. Not so much whether or not that Bungie is right in doing what they're doing. So let's go ahead and take a look.
So Beyond Light is 2 months away as of this recording, and Bungie has given us all kinds of details on what is to come and what is to go on November 10th. We know that we're losing 4 planets, 5 raids, 7 strikes, 11 Crucible maps, and the loot, story missions, adventures, and other activities associated with that content. And whether you believe it's okay for this content to go because it's not relevant or nobody hardly plays it is fine, but no matter how you look at it, we are losing a ton of content regardless of your personal thoughts on it. So my question today is, will Beyond Light have enough content to justify the removal of so much old content?
To answer that question, he'll go into more detail, but yeah, there'll actually be more than enough content within the game for them to justify taking out content.
Now, I don't necessarily mean a one-to-one trade-off like Beyond Light needs to add 4 planets, 5 raids, and 7 strikes, but simply will it be enough that we don't notice the missing content? Now, Bungie is charging $40 for Beyond Light and $50 if you want the season that launches alongside it, making it the most expensive fall Destiny purchase to date.
That is true. So Destiny's 2 DLCs that released along with Destiny 1 were $20. Taken King was $40. Rise of Iron was $30. Forsaken, I believe, was $40. Yeah, Forsaken was $40. Shadow Keep was $35. And I don't even believe that even included the season passes for the annual pass for the entire year. I believe it was $60, it looks like, for the annual pass for the entire year.
Now, if you have an IQ above room temperature, then you know that they're selling it this way because they know so many people won't just buy Beyond Light and not the season released with it, so they know they can charge $50 for both and still claim it's a $40 expansion. Shadowkeep, however, launched with the inclusion of its season for $35, so to see this year that price go up to $50 for the expansion in season.
Now, see, I do see that that's a kind of unfair argument there, because if you were to buy Shadowkeep along with its season, it would have been $45, so it's only a $5 increase comparatively. But the annual pass for Shadowkeep did provide more, and I feel like that's not a very good argument that he's making towards it, because he's leaving out the fact that you could pay for the seasons individually. You were not guaranteed the seasons just because you bought Shadowkeep. That was a whole separate deal. Shadowkeep was its own thing, and then they had the DLCs on top, the seasons for the DLCs on top of that.
Seems a bit steep, especially when you consider the amount of content that's leaving the game. But let's take a look at what's being added with Beyond Light. Now, Beyond Light is bringing one new destination, Europa. And Europa looks to be pretty big, probably around the size of the EDZ, which is great. And if the destination is filled with things to do, then it might be enough, like the Dreadnought from Taken King that has loads to do.
I will point out the fact that he will bring up new content as in newly created content. He does not consider Cosmodrome new content. He doesn't consider the 3 strikes that we are getting back. Omnigol, the Saber, and Sepix are not considered new to him, so those don't count. So when he means new is quite literally new. Now he does compare things to Taken King, which I feel like is a very, very strange comparison, but sure.
Beyond Light is bringing 3 new supers to the game, 1 for each class, and on top of that, they are new elements, Stasis, which is great. Beyond Light is adding a new story campaign, raid, and dungeon. Beyond Light is not adding any new PvP maps or Gambit maps and only adding 1 new strike. Now, most of what is being added is about par for the course for a new fall expansion, a new destination, a new campaign, a raid, a dungeon, new supers, all good stuff that I'm excited for, but my concern comes from what's not being added. Now let's take a second here to compare to Taken King and Forsaken, the other $40 expansions in the franchise. Taken King launched with 4 new strikes: Fallen Saber, Echo Chamber, Shield Brothers, and Sunless Cell. Taken King also launched with 9 Crucible maps.
So he's going to use Taken King as a comparison for Forsaken, which would be okay if it weren't for the fact that he's going to make the argument that it launched with 4 new strikes and it launched with 9 new Crucible matches. But the problem is that Taken King technically launched with 3 on Xbox because of the exclusivity deal and 4 for PlayStation. They did drop the Malak strike in April for the April update, but that was what is that? 6 months after the release of Taken King, 6-7 months after the release of Taken King. So it didn't drop immediately with it. So you were left with 3 if you were on Xbox, 4 if you were on PlayStation. It eventually went up by 1, but that's all you got for the entire year, right? That's all you got for an entire year.
Frontier, Memento, The Drifter, Dungeons, Crossroads, Bannerfall, Vertigo, Cathedral of Dusk, and Sector 618. 4 new strikes and 9 new Crucible maps. It makes me question, why is Beyond Light only adding 1 new strike and 0 new Crucible maps? Again with Forsaken. Forsaken launched with 4 new strikes: Warden of Nothing, Broodhold, Hallowed Lair, and the Corrupted.
And again, he fails to bring up the fact that one of those was still tied to PlayStation exclusivity. It wasn't available to us until last fall season. Broodhold was a PlayStation exclusive, so it launched 3 strikes on both PC and on Xbox, while it launched 4 on PlayStation. I'm just trying to point out these facts because it seems like something that he glances over, especially for someone that plays on Xbox. It kind of boggles my mind that he would just kind of leave out that context.
And Forsaken launched with 4 new Crucible maps: Firebase Echo, Citadel, Gambler's Ruin, and Equinox. I think that 4 new strikes and 9 new Crucible maps alone has to be worth $20 or more, and that was included with Taken King's new raid, supers, and the Dreadnought destination. So Bungie wants me to believe that
he's also going to argue a lot with using Crucible and Gambit maps, which to me, and I think for most of the player base, does not hold a significant value within DLCs themselves. Most of the players find value in the campaign, strikes, raids, and really just repeatable activities. The maps don't really matter as much as the activities that you are able to participate in.
Europa Its raid, dungeon, and new supers are all worth $50. I just don't see the value here when you compare it to previous Destiny DLCs.
I would argue that that is subjective.
If they're charging $40 to $50 for this expansion, then I'd expect Forsaken levels of content, not anything less. And already they're showing us that it is going to be less.
And he's saying Forsaken's level of content. Forsaken launched with the 3 strikes, 4 if you're on PlayStation. That's what it launched with. But Bungie hasn't released all information. We know that it's going to be launching with 1 new strike for Europa. It's going to be launching with the Omnigul strike and the Cosmodrome. We know it's going to be launching with those. We just don't know what they're going to be doing down the line, especially because things were pushed back into November. We have no clue if they're going to be doing anything come, if they had anything planned in December or January. We have no clue if they were planning to add additional content to the game, just because they were more focused on launching Beyond Light and giving us that first before going in depth about the roadmap for this next year.
Less strikes than Forsaken, less PvP maps, less distance.
Yes, it is less. It is technically less. We are getting less strikes than Forsaken, but I would argue that technically speaking, we are getting the same number in year 4, the same amount that we got in Forsaken. Technically, getting all 4 is technically the same. Just 2 of them are not going to, 3 of them aren't going to be new ones. 2 of them not going to be there on launch. So, I mean, technically.
Destinations, less new supers.
And I don't understand what he means by less new supers. We are getting an entire new subclass, something that we haven't had since Taken King. Although Forsaken did introduce a new branch within our subclasses, right? The Well, the Thunder Crash, and Spectral Blades, those were of the same element. We haven't seen Bungie do a brand new element of Super since Taken King. That's when we had Sunbreaker, we had Stormcaller, and we had Night Stalker. Those are 3 completely brand new element of supers that were introduced into the game, that were introduced into Taken King. So Bungie hasn't done a new element since then. They have given us new supers within our subclasses, but they haven't changed up the game by doing a completely different element. That's and based off the way that Stasis looks, it looks like we're going to be having a lot more customization in our supers in general. Not the same customizations that we had in D1, but way more than what we have right now in D2. Than picking between 3 diamonds.
Now look, I'm not saying Beyond Light will be bad, but I'm simply saying it already looks like they're overcharging for this expansion. And if that doesn't at least bug you a little bit, then you might be the reason gaming companies continue to take advantage of consumers.
They take advantage of consumers in more than one way. It's not necessarily because we think that we're not being overcharged. It's simply because we buy the game because we still want to play it. It's not about us agreeing with it. I don't think anyone is agreeing with Bungie's price of $50. It just so happens to be that we want to play the game, and to be able to play the game, you have to buy it. It kind of comes with the territory.
And to go back to the original question, Will Beyond Light bring enough new content that we won't notice the old content leaving? No, I don't think it will.
Yeah. Will it bring more content that we won't notice the old content leaving? No. But I would make the argument that we have enough content from the past to satisfy what we will have going forward, right? Um, I'll let him
Especially
go.
without any new Crucible maps, any new Gambit maps, and only one strike. If you're already tired of playing on the same Crucible maps, it's going to feel much worse now that you're losing 11 of them. If you're already sick of the strikes and rotation,
So, with that argument, I would state that it doesn't matter that we're losing 11 of the maps because right now we have a grand total of 20 maps that will be available November 10th. 11 of them are going into the content vault. Right now we have 16 from D2. We have I don't think Exodus Blue is back in the game yet. I don't believe so. But Bannerfall, Rusted Lands, Twilight Gap, right? Those are in the game. Those are in the game right now. So we have 19 maps that were in this that are in the game, and then we're gonna have 11 going away. You have to ask yourself a question. Do you like playing the Citadel? When was the last time you played Emperor's Respite? When was the last time that you played on Equinox and Eternity? I think out of all these maps, the one that I'm going to miss the most is Vostok, and that's because Vostok was a map that they made for Destiny 2, but then released in Rise of Iron because they had to delay Destiny 2. And I think that's the only one that I'm really going to miss. I like that. I like that map. The other ones I'm kind of okay with, especially Citadel. I do not like Citadel, and I don't think that many other people like Citadel. As for the strikes that we are losing the Pyramidion, the Festering Core, Savathun Song, Strange Terrain, Will of Thousands, Tree of Probability, and a Garden World, right? 4 of these strikes were criticized by Destiny players because they were just reused assets from the campaign made into a strike. And people criticized Bungie heavily on that. Strange Terrain, easy strike, very boring. Will of Thousands, easy strike, very boring. My own personal opinion, Savathun's song can go eat a chungus. Like, it is insane. That you would argue that you are losing content, and four of the strikes were heavily criticized as just reused assets from the story. Like, I don't know about you, I'm also tired of running through the Infinite Forest to get to the main part of the strike, and that's for 2 of them. You can easily run through Strange Terrain and Will of Thousands. Those aren't hard strikes to run through, right? Now, if he were arguing from a Nightfall perspective, maybe I would agree with him, but he's arguing from a strike perspective, and last time that I checked, strikes are not the same as they were in D1, where you can get endgame loot and you can grind out strikes to get that endgame loot, the random rolls on strike-specific loot. You don't have that in D2. You have to do the Nightfall. You do the Nightfall, complete the Nightfall. The higher difficulty you do it on, the more likely you are to drop those rewards, and that's how you get those strike-specific drops, right? The sniper rifle, the hand cannon, the pulse rifle, is like all those things drop from the Nightfall version, not the regular strike version.
then removing 7 of them and only adding 1 isn't going to shake up anything there.
And like I said, he does not consider the Will of Crota, the Devil's Lair, and the Fallen Saber Strike to be new content. He considers that to be content that's in D1 that's still accessible and still playable at the moment that you already paid for it. That's his argument there. Um, so you're only technically getting one new strike, which is on Europa. We don't know which one it's going to be. Hopefully, it's, again, not reused assets. But um, so he's saying that you're only getting one new one. They're taking out these 7, right?
Instead of 8 raids to run, you'll only have 3.
And then he says 8 raids. Um, I don't know. Um, I guess he's considering the Europa one immediately, even though we don't have it. But let's be honest. One, Leviathan is useless to play, right? The only reason why you would play Leviathan is just to get it done and get some year 1 exotics from the underbelly. Like, that is it. There's no reason to play Leviathan because the weapons are a static roll. You can't get random rolls on them. They are whatever that they will drop as for the rest of time. They're not rolling over. The only thing that's rolling over is the armor. Eater of Worlds, no one plays Eater of Worlds anymore. Again, there's still no point to it. Spire Stars, no one does Spire Stars anymore. Scourge of the Past, people only play it to get Anarchy, and even with that, it's a very, very fast raid. I've seen people get it done in like 10 minutes. It's insane. And Crown of Sorrow is probably played the most out of the rest of the Leviathan, but even that's barely anything. And then we look at the ones that they are keeping. The Last Wish raid, no one does the Last Wish raid properly anymore. You jump in, you get the 2 chests, you're right, you get the 2 freebie chests, and then you do the checkpoint all the way to Riven, defeat Riven with the cheese, and then you jump back, and then you do the Queen's Walk. You get the loot at the end, right? And then Garden of Salvation, you have to do in full, right? But people honestly like it. It's not a terribly hard raid, so we had that. But the content that they are vaulting is just content that no one plays. Saying that instead of the 8 that we're only gonna have 3. Well, but did you play the 5 that they're getting rid of? You had to actively play the other content for you to justify your argument of they should not get rid of it, right? That the content that you're giving is not adequate enough to substantiate this. If no one's playing it, then why keep it? Yeah, there are some people that are still playing it, but there's no point in playing any of the Leviathan raid or layers because none of the weapons are carrying over. And same thing with the only thing in maybe you want the armor because the armor has higher stat rolls, but for that there's other raids for you to do. See, you do Scourge of the Past, but the only mods that you can put on that armor and on Crown of Sorrow and on the Leviathan armor, all you can put on there are the Forsaken mods. You can't put on the enhanced Rayleigh Defender. You can't put on the Global Reach for the Warmind builds. You can't put those on. So that armor is obsolete. You can't even put on the mods that you would want. So you're stuck using armor that, yeah, it's expanded for over a year, but you can't really do much with that now, can you? Now you have taken armaments and you have fallen armaments, then you're all set. You're all Gucci. Because at that point, you have an advantage in some of the raid layers. You will have a good advantage once Beyond Light drops. You'll have something that gives you heavy ammo. But honestly, in a PvE aspect, heavy ammo isn't a problem. The only reason why people use those mods were to use it in Gambit. That way they can invade on the other side and kill people very, very easily with heavy ammo. So then we go to the Last Wish. Last Wish, I believe, falls into that same category of it uses, um, it only uses mods from Forsaken's shop. So it only uses taken armaments, invigoration, stuff like that, right? Garden of Salvation, that one has been expanded on. It doesn't use anything past the Season of Undying mods, I believe, unfortunately. So it's kind of weird the way that that's limited. But it's what it is. It's still a raid that you can do with weapons that aren't expiring anytime soon, with armor that's not expiring anytime soon. So
Again, I'm not saying the content in Beyond Light will suck. Maybe the raid will be great, the strike one of the best, the dungeon incredible, who knows? But I just don't know if Bungie should be asking $40 to $50 for it. Keep in mind guys, $50 is just shy of $60, $60 being a full priced new game. And Cyberpunk, Assassin's Creed Valhalla both will cost $60, and I'd bet.
yeah, and here he's comparing the price that they're asking for a year's worth of content to AAA titles that are coming out. When you don't know all the content for a video game, you can't really compare them. You don't know how much content you're going to be getting in Beyond Light. They haven't released all that information. We don't know what their roadmap is going to be. We know about their seasonal festive things, right? You have Festival of Lost is going to be there. You have the Dawning. You have Crimson Doubles. Hopefully they at some point bring back Sparrow Racing, right? There are activities that they do that every year that that they're going to do again. That's not the big deal, right? But you don't know what else they're going to do. They are going to be bringing back Vaults of Glass. They'll have to revamp it, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be revamping the other 3 strikes that we're going to be having for Omnigul, the Saber, and what was it, Sepix. So I'm sure that they're going to be revamping those, especially because we're going to be jumping in and we're going to be having we're going to have new supers, we're going to have new abilities, we're going to have new weapons. So I'm sure they'll find a way to make it a little bit more challenging, change things up just ever so slightly to keep people on their toes.
Beyond Light is nowhere near the value of those games.
And see, he says he thinks that he doesn't believe that Beyond Light is going to have near the same amount of value as those games, but that's a personal opinion, and that's very subjective, because the value that you might find in Assassin's Creed Valhalla might not be the same value you find in Cyberpunk. The amount of value you might find in Cyberpunk might not be the amount of the amount that you find in in Halo. Like, that's all subjective, right? I play Destiny to a harsh extent, and I still find value in continuing to play it. That doesn't mean that I'm going to make an argument and say that Destiny is better than Cyberpunk. They're 1, 2 different genres, 2, played way differently, and 3, captivate a different audience. Is saying that you're not going to get enough content in one without knowing all the content that you're going to get, and then comparing it to another game where you don't know the game, that other game isn't even out, and you can't even compare it. Now, if you wanted to compare it to, Marvel's Avengers, right? That recently came out. Then I would see a slight argument there. Where look at this $60 game that came out, and although it has a great single player, the multiplayer is lackluster. Would you consider that to be worth $60? Right? That would be making an actual argument. But you are using content that isn't out yet to make an argument, saying that it will have more content when you don't know that as a fact.
Now, after you've beaten Beyond Light's campaign, you've ran the raid and dungeon a few times, what do you usually do after you are done with that? You probably grind power level, and what does that consist of? Running strikes, playing Crucible, and playing Gambit.
And that's where he's wrong. And I am really confused about some of his arguments that he made there, because last time I checked, you grind for power level, that way you can do the raid, not you grind, not you complete everything, you do the raid and then you grind for power level afterwards. Usually the raid is the end game content that you want to get as maxed light level as you possibly could before jumping in, right? You want to make sure that you are as close to that threshold as possible. That way you're not having a hard time against all the ads and against the boss. That way it doesn't feel impossible to you. But that means that you are going to be jumping in and you're going to be doing Crucible and Strikes and then the raid, not the other way around. That just wouldn't make any sense for you to complete the raid and then you're like, well, I still need more power levels, so I'm going to jump into Strikes. Usually by the time that you get to be able to do the raid, you need to do the raid in dungeon to get that pinnacle gear, right? To get the higher light level gear to continue pushing yourself forward. The Strikes aren't going to help you.
This is why I think there's a massive problem, because they're expecting this game to survive without any new Crucible maps, no new Gambit maps, and only one new Strike.
And again, they don't need new Crucible maps. They don't need new Crucible maps. They have plenty of Crucible maps to use. Reducing the playlist for Crucible and reducing the amount of Crucible maps could help increase the amount of maps that we play on, and it can reduce the time that it takes to find other people in matchmaking. Right, it's one of those things that kind of bounces with each other. As for Gambit, he brought up Gambit, right? And saying that there's no new Gambit maps. Which true, they're taking away 2 Gambit maps. They're taking Cathedral of Scars and Kel's Grave, the 2 most hated maps in Gambit. But they're also consolidating Gambit because not a lot of people play Gambit. Gambit is a hard activity to play solo. It is very hard to play solo because coordinating with a team that you're not speaking to is very hard to do. I can't tell you how many Gambit matches I've jumped in and I lose, not because the other team is doing well, but because the team that I'm on is just blatantly ignoring blockers, ignoring invaders, jumping in and invading while they don't have any heavy ammo maybe, or right, they might see that I'm rocking truth to just quickly get in and get out of an invasion, but they'll decide to jump in because they want to try it. They want to get them kills, right? They want to be the hero. It happens. It's very hard to do solo. It's why it's a very, very frustrating thing. They're trying to consolidate Gambit and Gambit Prime into one game mode to hopefully even things out. I know in Gambit Prime I felt like things were a lot more even. Just given its game mechanics, it made solo matchmaking a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. But they still need to draw people in to Gambit because not a lot of people are playing it, and it's not because of a lack of maps.
I don't know how they expect the PvP to hold up that long without any brand new Crucible maps.
And PvP will be just fine. There's 20 Crucible maps that will be in the game. Crucible will be just fine. They don't need to add. People do not buy the DLC because they're like, hey, look, they're adding a new Crucible map. Hey, look, they're adding a new Gambit map. Well, that's worth the $50. Like, that's not how that works. The value is in the raid, is in the story, is in, the new armor, the new gear, right? That stuff. That's where all the content is. All the other stuff is kind of just fluff. Even strikes are somewhat just fluff because it's good the first time, maybe good the second time. The third time is just repetitive. And you're not getting anything from just playing the strike. You have to do the nightfall to actually get the reward.
Maybe they're anticipating that Stasis will shake up Crucible enough, but I think that without any new maps, it's going to remain very boring to play PvP in this game.
New maps didn't make it exciting to play PvP. That's not what brought people in to play PvP. What brought people in to play PvP is new gear, new supers, new weapons, right? It's like that's what brings people in to play PvP. You can be playing on any map, and yeah, it's boring playing on the same maps over and over. But how many times have you played on Midtown? How many times have you played on Widow's Court? Right? The Fortress? How about Endless Vale? Right? The other maps do not, for some reason, they don't get played as much, and that's just because for some reason they don't make it into the rotation through whatever system that they have going on. But there's 20 maps, and they only took out 11. They took out a third. It's a little over a third, right? They took over a third of the maps because they had so many. It's diluting it. You're diluting the playlist by putting in so many maps, and then you get the same maps over and over and over again. Ask yourself how many times you played on the same map over and over and over and over again, back to back to back. It's annoying.
I think Gambit is going to suffer too. There's only 3 maps in rotation for Gambit, which is absolutely insane.
And he's wrong about that. I don't think that he really looked it over. There's going to be 4 maps in rotation. EDZ, Nessus, Titan, and Mars. Those are going to be the 4 maps. There's currently 6. They're removing 2 of them because no one likes Cathedral of Scars and no one likes Kell's Grave. No one. They are very, very annoying maps.
I just don't think that that's going to be enough to keep people playing Gambit long term.
The problem is that no one is playing Gambit. That's the problem. Not adding in more maps would not solve Gambit. No one is tired of the repetitive maps. People just don't want to play Gambit because solo queuing is just stressful. And between the 2 types of Gambit, it's just not worth it, especially when there's no endgame content for you to get from it.
And to take away 7 strikes and only add 1, people aren't going to be hanging out in the strike playlist that long either.
People don't hang out in the strike playlist unless they're trying to complete bounties. That is it. Strikes are not an end game content. Strikes are a basic level entry to the game. They aren't hard to complete. You don't get booted to orbit if you don't complete it within a certain amount of time. It's a strike. People don't grind strikes away for loot. They might grind it to get levels, but they don't do it for the loot. And that's for a specific purpose. Because the real loot comes in the end game content, which is going to be the raid. Shit, even some Crucible can be considered end game. Trials of Osiris, right? That can be considered end game. Because that is what gives you those higher levels.
Lack of focus on core activities is going to kill this game, and I really think that that's the biggest problem with Beyond Light this time around.
And he's saying the lack of focus on core games. I feel like he's just angry with the fact that they're not focusing in on Crucible, because they are focusing. They're taking out maps to give a more solid base to what you're going to be playing, right? They took out 11 Crucible maps, reducing the number. It was over diluted. There was too much in there. Take out maps that no one cares about. Same thing with Gambit. When it comes to Crucible in itself, they took out game types that people just weren't playing: Supremacy, Countdown, Lockdown, Breakthrough, Doubles, Momentum Control, and Scorch. Although those two will be rotating back in. They will be rotating in and out. They're keeping Rumble, Clash, Control, Iron Banner, that happens every month, Elimination, Trials of Osiris every weekend, Showdown, Survival, Mayhem, Clash, right? They are reducing the amount of activities to focus you in on the core activities. That's exactly what they're doing. In saying that they're not doing that is kind of lying. It's lying or just not understanding the information that you're reading.
No new Crucible maps, no new Gambit maps, and only one new strike. I think that's absolutely a joke. And some of you may be saying, well, the Cosmodrome is coming back and they're adding strikes from Destiny 1 throughout the year. And I just gotta say, guys, that's not new content. I can load up Destiny 1 right now and patrol the Cosmodrome or run the Omnigul Strike. Just because Bungie decided to pull a destination out of their hocus pocus content vault doesn't mean it's new.
And I feel like this is a non-argument also, because I feel like Bungie is not the only one that does this. Now I believe WoW does it. I know that Warframe has has a Prime Warframes that get rotated in and out. You're able to grind for them for a while, and then they put them away, and you have to wait for them to rotate back out, or you have to buy them off of other players, right? So I feel like Bungie isn't the only one that rotates things in and out. His frustration with the his frustration with them rotating content, I feel like just stems from the fact that he's like, well, you already had that content before. Why are you putting it back in? Well, because that way other people can experience it. Maybe not everyone has experienced it.
You should never be alright with paying for content you paid for years ago.
You're right. I'm not okay with it, but I'm also a long time Destiny player. Like a long time Destiny player. I started working at GameStop after high school in 2014 when Destiny first came out. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to afford it and any of its DLC, but I was able to play it because GameStop had a policy where if you had 3 or more used copies of a game, you were allowed to check it out and you were allowed to borrow it. You just had to bring it back within a certain amount of days, or if the supply was getting low, you had to bring it back. So we had 3 copies of Destiny, and I borrowed one and I played as much of its content as I could. Like I said, I couldn't afford the Dark Below, and I couldn't afford the House of Wolves DLC because I was barely making anything at GameStop, but I was able to play it. Eventually, I did buy Taken King when it came out. I pre-ordered it and I purchased the collector's edition. Did that. Rise of Iron, pre-ordered that. I got the most expensive version of that. Got the collector's edition of Destiny 2. I was not able to. I got the most expensive edition of Forsaken. I wasn't able to get the collector's edition for Shadowkeep. Because unfortunately, I didn't know that Shadowkeep had a collector's edition, but I would have bought it if I could. And now I have pre-ordered the collector's edition of Beyond Light. That's all on me, right? Because I enjoy Bungie's content, and I would not recommend, if you feel like you just don't know if you would be into the game, to buy all that content every single year, right? I can't recommend that you do that. It's dangerous. You can really spend a lot of money on this game and not have enough money for the things that you actually want to have. But I mean, I'm not okay with them releasing DLC after DLC. That's extremely expensive. But they do it anyway, and we buy it. And for the most part, the content that we get out of it overshadows the price that I paid up front. Now, main argument that I can make is that if you're gonna have Eververse, you really should not have these extraordinary prices because Eververse will do the job for you. But okay.
And I don't think you should be okay with content you paid for just a couple of years ago leaving the game.
But see, whose content that you paid for a couple of years ago, right? So the content that he would be talking about would be Festering Core, Festering Core, Scourge, and Crown. That would be the content that he would be talking about. That would be technically leaving because Scourge and Crown came out in Forsaken, right? That was the stuff that came out a couple years ago, right? It came out. It came out in year 2. Sorry, man. Like, if no one's playing it, no one's playing it. It's why keep content in the game that no one's playing?
We bought a full price $60 game and two $20 DLCs, and all of that content is disappearing.
Okay, if you're not happy about it, that's understandable, but it's not going away and will never return. They're taking it out of the game because no one's playing it. They'll bring it back when it's relevant, and then they'll put it back and you'll be able to grind for the loot in it. Hopefully they'll bring back the Leviathan and it'll have random rolls on like on all the weapons, because that would be nice. They have some pretty nice weapons, but all the weapons are static rolls. Um, um, that's not. It's like that's neither here nor there. They're vaulting content that no one is playing.
And yeah, they may bring it back one day, but it's gone for now, and I don't remember paying for an expiration date on my content.
But you don't get to choose that. If they decided to shut down the Destiny servers right now, you paid whatever amount of money that you did for all the content in Destiny. If they shut down the servers, then that's it. You've spent your money. And it had an expiration date. All content has an expiration date of some sort. You can't tell me that Cyberpunk is going to come out and it is guaranteed to not have some type of paid DLC for it. You can pay $60 for a full game. That doesn't mean that they don't add in more content that adds in substantial gameplay. You don't know that. Seeing that they do events all year round in Destiny's universe, and they usually make that free, right? That is Festival of the Lost, Dawning, Crimson Doubles. That's usually free content. Us paying the $50, right? Us paying the $50, but then getting to reap the rewards of having whatever benefits that come from paying that $50. You don't know what it's gonna have. We just know what it's gonna. It's like it could be. We could get some, in some special in-game weapon that you can only get if you purchase the $50 version, right? Then you a step above the people that are just playing the game for free. I don't know.
And I think Bungie's content vault is just a fancy way to tell us they're reskinning content, and they're hoping we don't mind because it's got a fancy name attached to it.
But they also did that in Rise of Iron. See, if you're going to have a problem with them reskinning content, you can't just be mad now. Back in D1, they took out strikes. You had strikes from year 1 that you could not play in the Taken King because they were separated. They were separated between year 1 and year 2 content. Like you weren't able to. You can still play them, but it was a year 1 version. You really didn't get anything out of doing it, right? like nothing. You no good rewards or anything. It was, you know, it was there if you wanted to play it. But then they brought back Sepix, right? They brought back Sepix. They later on revamped Crota's End and Vault of Glass, and they brought those back in Rise of Iron. Like you, if you're going to have a problem with Bungie doing this, you can't just bag on them doing it in D2. They they've done it before. They've done it before. We'll watch the video and then I'm gonna show you something else. But
But maybe I'm wrong, guys. As always, I want to hear your thoughts on this in the comment section. Are you worried about the amount of content?
so one thing that I noticed, so I went right on his channel after watching that video. I was like, okay, well let's see. Let's see. He's doing a review on Destiny 2, so let's go and see what other content that he does. Right. So right is like you have that, and I was like, best auto on D1. Okay, that was 4 days ago. D1 Tanix, right? I didn't watch this one. The Triumph Seals removed and Beyond Light. You have I don't remember even clicking on that. I think I clicked on it. Oh yeah. I clicked on it because I wanted to see um, kind of his gameplay. I wanted to see if his gamer tag was the same there because I actually checked his Xbox gamer tag to see how much time that he's put into D1 and D2. He's barely put any time into D2. He's put in like 4 days of gameplay, which yeah, I mean technically that is a lot. That's like what 96 hours. He probably put in like 100 hours in total. Um, but like as I went through, it looked like he mainly makes content from D1. Like he started a new character in D1 and started playing, and that's fine. You know, whatever your audience is going for, my dude. Um, I don't mind that. It's like it's not a problem. But he does spend a lot of time here. And I skipped the end of his video because then at the end of his video, he goes back into D1 and he pretty much he does a very annoying thing where he does the troll voice and is in the cause of drone. He's like, I can't. They did a really good job with this. It's really really annoying. Um, but I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where if you're going to criticize Bungie for their content vault and revamping activities, then don't just do it for Destiny 2, but also do it for D1. Like this whole thing of Destiny, the original Destiny, and Taken King was the best DLC that we got, and the most content is like, no, it isn't. It's not. The most content that we got was in Forsaken, but we got a huge overload of content, like way too much content, that made it really hard to get things done because it pulled people in every direction, and it wasn't really all that fun. In fact, it burnt people out. It burnt me out. I have 93 days of gameplay in Destiny 2. Right, it's a lot, right? It 2,000 hours of gameplay in Destiny 2. And the problem that I have is the fact that it burnt me out. Forsaken burnt me out to the point where I stopped playing. I stopped playing after Black Armory. They had Black Armory towards the end. I kind of teetered off and I jumped off. And then I simply just stopped playing. I was like, I'm done. I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. And then I jumped back on for Shadowkeep because I wanted to see where things were going. It was, we had the moon's haunted, and he's like, all right, let's go back. Eris is back. Let's see what happens. And then it was Dark Pyramid. I was like, oh shit, things are getting real. And I've been playing ever since. I don't mind the grind because I've now balanced out my my schedule in between playing. I do want to check out this video. Actually, no, I really don't. But I mean, like I said, going over his video, it's not so much that he is wrong in the fact that Bungie has this toxic practice of, you know, charging a lot for their DLCs, but none of his arguments really stand any ground because they are giving us content through the year that is more than substantial enough to continue playing, right? If they are going to give us Vaults of Glass in year 4 here, um, it is very much possible that they are trying to redo the mechanics of it because as is, if we were going in with the same mechanics that we had in D1, there what would be the point? What would be the point of actually doing the Vaults of Glass just for nostalgia purposes? Because we'd be able to blow through that and it would be all over. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, that was fun. That was cool. Next, what's next, right? Um, but you know what? That's pretty much it. Um, I Part of me hopes that he sees this, but mostly you guys enjoyed. If you guys want me to look over other people, if you guys want to see any type of gameplay, um, I try to stream me playing the Sword of Arts online at the moment on my Twitch channel. But other than that, I hope you guys have yourselves a lovely day, and thank you for watching.